The United States men's national team is finally set to have a youth camp. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Filippo and welcome to FuboTV, and today we are going to do a deep dive into the 2021 Revelations Cup US men's national team roster. But before we dive into that, I'm going to tell you the games the United States will be playing, which will take place November 10th and November 16th, where to watch them, and much more. But before we get to that, I want to give a shout out to Pete from 11 Yanks and David Kerr. They will both be here very soon in this video to help us break down the entire US men's national team roster. Pete from 11 Yanks, y'all should be familiar with him. I put his link on the description. And David Kerr is the head scout academy of the Columbus crew, and he will be helping us break down every single player from this US men's national team U20 roster. With that said, before we start, make sure to hit the like button. I won't be requesting it during the video, and subscribe if you enjoy this content. And don't forget, we will be doing live streams for every single game, just like we do for every US men's national team camp, and we'll also be doing post matches, and we'll also be doing the 7 things we learned video for the U20 camp. Thank you very much. Hit the like button. Let's play the intro and let's get it started. The Revelations Cup is set to take place in Mexico from November 10th to November 16th of 2021. Now, the roster for this tournament is technically U18, however, it's for the U20 cycle, so the players in this roster were born in 2003 or later, but they are calling it a U20 tournament. If you're in the United States, you can watch it on TUDN. It will be broadcast by TUDN, so make sure to watch that. We'll also be doing watch-alongs in this channel right here, FuboTV, so you'll be watching along with us. Along with that, what are the games we should be looking out for? At least the United States games. The first game the United States will play is against Brazil at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, November 10th. Now, the second game, the United States will face Colombia at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Saturday, November 13th. The last game will be on Tuesday, November 16th, and the United States will face Mexico at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, the only issue with the United States-Mexico game is that it starts halfway through the United States versus Jamaica for World Cup qualifying. So for that one, we won't be able to do a watch-along specifically, but we'll be talking about it. We'll do a video analyzing that game as well, and hopefully we get to watch both games. That said, that's enough for the preview for the Revelations Cup. I try to keep it short. Let's hit the like button before we start. Let's bring in Pete and David Kerr and break down this US men's national team roster. All right, everyone, we did this video before at 11 Yanks. We talked about many of the players we're going to talk about today, but today we're going to talk about the actual roster. And obviously, we brought the dream team here together for this talk. Pete from 11 Yanks, which you all should be more than familiar with. How are you doing, Pete?
Good. Excited to dig into this roster.
And David Kerr, the head scout of the Columbus Crew Academy. How are you doing, David?
Doing well, Pipo. Thanks for having me, man. Great to be here.
Guys, by the way, Pete's channel is on description as always, obviously, and David Kerr's Twitter handle is also on description. Great follow as well. Now, the roster is out, and we're going to put it here on screen. But before we start talking about the roster, I already mentioned in this video earlier before we started here, the schedule. We're going to be facing Brazil. After Brazil, we face Colombia. After that, we face Mexico. I want to talk very quickly about Brazil. I'm going to take 30 seconds on this. Brazil has been preparing for 2 to 3 weeks already. Brazil doesn't have all the players available for the U18, U20 level that they're bringing. There's a few missing, but most of them are here. It's a very strong squad that's been preparing. And Brazil takes every single tournament very seriously, including youth tournaments, to win the trophy. So that's one thing to keep in mind, the context. This is not a joke tournament. It's a pretty serious tournament. Before we start about talking the roster, I want you guys to mention something to keep an eye on for this tournament and for whatever reason. You want to go first, David?
Yeah. So particularly with this roster, I want to highlight the attacking strengths that we're going to bringing. We have a really not just experienced group at the youth national team level during their U16 cycle. These are a lot of guys who aren't just professionals, they're impact players at their clubs, which we've never really had. Now, their chemistry together is going to be something to note, but that's going to be something really exciting with this group.
Yeah, and before, Pete, you give us your take also before we start, just to mention, today is Monday. The game is on Wednesday. We're recording this on Monday. The team just got together today, so they're pretty much training once or twice before they face Brazil. Now, Pete, your first thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, my first thoughts is that, I'm happy we're having this tournament, but this whole thing feels very slapped together from a USSF perspective. Like you said, today's Monday. The roster is getting together today. They can't have a high-intensity training session on Tuesday because that's the day before the game. So at best, you're looking at 1 or 2 mild to medium training sessions. The coach was not announced, until like Friday. It just feels like either we're not taking this very seriously or something is going on where it's just sort of like, all right, we'll go and let's slap something together last minute. But to be honest, it's sort of what I've come to expect from the USSF at this point.
And let's just hope talent bails them out on this one. So now we got here on screen the full roster broken down as a depth chart, right? Essentially the players in their respective positions, the bench players, and who we expect to start. This was put together by David. And we're going to have David talk about it, and we'll talk about every single player. And if you guys remember at the end of the video, I want you maybe, David, because I don't know much about Mickey Varas, the new coach of the U20 cycle, and how long he'll stay, or if it was just for this tournament. You can talk about it very soon as well. But David, let's start talking about the goalkeepers. We got Gaga Slonina from the Chicago Fire, which was pretty damn good from MLS, the 17-year-old. And we have Alex Borto that plays for Fulham, the U19's Fulham, right? Or is he part of the senior squad on the bench? Can you talk about him for us real quick?
Yeah, so with the goalkeepers, this really was your best case scenario group called up. The only way it could have been better was you brought maybe a third string guy in this group. But Gabe Slonina at 17 is a starter and really has been one of the better performing goalies of MLS in the starts. He's a great shot stopper. He's pretty good with his feet for his age too. Overall, really solid. Alex Borto after that, he honestly could start for this team too. He's a starting goalkeeper for the Fulham U23 teams as of 2003, so he's the U18. He's also starting to do warm-ups with the first team for their games. And realistically, he's the third or fourth goalkeeper in that Fulham depth chart already, which is a championship team over in England. It's a huge deal for a kid at that level. No, they're Premier League right now.
Yeah,
even better,
especially for his age too.
Mm-hmm.
And Pete, hold on, go ahead, David.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's in a country where young talent is not often prioritized, so it's even more significant that a player in that position is moving up this quickly.
Now, Pete, you did a whole video on your Patreon breaking down Gaga Slonina, didn't you?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah. No, look, Gaga Slonina, we don't have that much data on him, at least from a professional perspective, right? We've got a limited data set on him, so it's hard to do a really detailed breakdown. But the thing that I liked about him specifically was, for a guy who is very big, he gets down low very, very fast. Sometimes very tall players, they struggle to get down low. We've seen that with Chituro Dunze in the past. The other thing I like about him is the things that he's good at, you can't really teach, okay? So, his instinct, his shot stopping, his reflexes, his reaction speed. Those are things you can't teach. Things like positioning or being more commanding in the 6-yard box, coming out for crosses, reading those crosses. Those are things that I think he still needs to improve on, but of course he does. He's 17. The good news is those are things he can learn as he gets better. He seems to have, from the limited data that we have, a lot of the skill sets that an elite goalkeeper can have down the line.
All right. So that does it for the goalkeepers here. We're going to move on to the fullbacks now. And let's go to the right backs first, right? We're going to start with Justin Che. I'll let you talk about both, David Kerr, first. Talk about both players in the right back position, and then we can dive in. Justin Che is a player that I've watched quite a bit. I'm pretty sure Pete has watched Justin a few times with Dallas as well. And you listed him, David, as a right back. We know he can play a right back, but ideally we would want him as a center back, but apparently he won't play as a center back for this one. Talk about the right backs, David.
Yeah, so I personally want Justin Che to be a center back in this group. But when you consider, I think it would be better to have Casey Walls and Jalen Neal, or even Casey Walls and Kobe Henry as the starting center backs, than with Caden Pierre as the right back. Even though Caden Pierre is very good, I think we benefit more by those other three guys being out there. But Justin Che's been playing every game as a right back for FC Dallas, so he has the positional experience that's needed to succeed at this U20 level. Going forward, he's good. I wouldn't say he's great going forward in the ball, but he's getting the job done in MLS, and he's still a very, very good lockdown defender. Caden Pierre is going to be more of a right back who he can go forward. He's a pretty good defender, arguably one of the best 1v1 defenders in this entire right back pool, actually, but a little bit more of a do-it-all. I think Justin Shea is going to be a lot bigger and probably that guy who, unless he's hurt, is going to be starting there. Like, if Caden Pierre comes in, I'm not going to be too worried defensively, although we will be wanting to see more from him offensively in this game.
Yeah, from Justin Shea, what I've noticed from him a lot, defensively, at least in MLS, right? I didn't follow him at Bayern. I didn't even know where to watch the games. But in MLS, defensively, he's been pretty good. Very good, especially for his age. He's very good also at progressing the ball forward as a defender or as a right back. We've seen him make some strong runs with the ball throughout the season. And like you said, he's okay when it comes to supporting the offense, right? It's not like he's a prolific crosser. I don't think he even got many assists or goals throughout this. I think he actually got no goals. Got a few assists. But yeah, his main duties are defensive, so I would definitely prefer Justin Shea at the center back. And Pete, I know Caden Pierre, I haven't really watched him. I don't know about you, Pete, but what are your thoughts on the fullbacks, the right backs?
I mean, I haven't seen Caden Pierre at all, so I'll just take David Kerr's word for it. Justin Shea has been in and out of the Dallas lineup, right? I still think that, an area that he can improve on, whether he wants to be a center back or a right back, is his concentration, because he switches off sometimes in crucial moments in the game, as happens with young players. But that's, you've seen him defensively with Dallas be a little suspect in key moments. And it's not a lack of ability or talent. It's just concentration. So hopefully he can improve that. But I mean, for this age group, he should have no problems, I think.
Yeah, that's something that maybe just with age, it'll adjust, right? It's not really
experience,
a talent thing. Yeah. So it's an okay problem to have now. Now the left backs of this, this roster. What do you have to say about him? I don't know much about him, to be honest.
This is a group that surprises me a little bit. In particular, the surprise for me is Caleb Wiley, but it's also a surprise that I rather like. So he's at Atlanta United, and while George Bello can be more of an attacking fullback that goes forward, creates like that way, Caleb Wiley's more of a lockdown, hard-nosed defending left back who is competent going forward. He's going to be good kind of driving past defenders, but he's not going to be a huge guy in the interplay and the build-out, things like that. But defensively, he's going to be rock solid. Jacob Green is a little bit of the opposite of that. He's a guy, whether he's on the right or whether he's on the left, is going to be extremely comfortable on the ball. Extremely good moving forward. Very good attacking fullback. Generally plays as a wingback that I've seen, so it'll be interesting to see how they use him in this group. But you kind of get a little bit of the best of both worlds with them. The only thing that we're kind of missing is that ideally the left backs in this age group are going to be Jonathan Gomez and Kevin Paredes. Jonathan Gomez isn't here because he wasn't released by Louisville City. Kevin Paredes is hurt. The gap from those two to these guys is huge. So that is a little bit of a disappointment, but they're still pretty good players nonetheless, and they're both going to be solid professionals.
Was John Tolkien not available for this age group? He's too old, right?
Yep. John Tolkien is just a couple months too old, I believe.
And David, Jacob can also play. He plays as a right back too, correct?
Yep. He can. He's a left-footed player, though.
Got it.
So he is a natural left back. Loudoun FC, where he's generally playing right now, he is a homegrown for DC, but he's more USL. They play him on both sides, and he does fine. He's just pretty good.
All right. So that does it for the goalkeepers and the fullbacks. Moving forward in the video now, let's talk about the center backs, and I'll let you take the lead once again, David, as the expert on US Youth right here. Obviously, Justin Shea not on the center back depth chart, but as you mentioned, he could maybe play as a center back at some point throughout this camp. There's 3 games. So start with the left center back first. There's just one player to talk about.
Yep. Yeah, so there's one natural left center back in the roster. And this is actually pretty typical that you only get 3 center backs in the youth national team roster. But it's Casey Walls, so Casey is a very solid athletically as a center back. Great athlete, good size, good speed, able to keep up with strikers, able to physically handle that even at the professional level. He's okay on the ball. At the youth levels, he was able to hit the long passes, things like that, but he was given a lot more time and space. At the professional level, he's been a little more susceptible to giving balls away at his feet, but overall still pretty solid for what you're going to get from a youth national team level player. A lot of the same things can kind of be said of Jalen Neal and Kobe Henry, honestly. Jalen's a pretty lockdown center back, and he's a little bit better than these other two on the ball. But overall, he's a pretty well-rounded player. He's very physically tall and he's good in the air. Defensively, he can have his moments of lapse in concentration. But overall, at the USL level where he's played at, he's done fine. Yep.
I was gonna say, are any of these center backs ball playing defenders? Any of them?
Not really.
No.
Not with this group. The ball playing center backs that we have in this age group that are eligible are Justin Shea, obviously, Antonio Leone, who we're going to play against Mexico, and then Brian Oko is one of them too, who's now on the Switzerland senior team roster, and then Brandon Craig is the other one, who's not included in this roster. Probably fair choice him not being selected. Most of these guys are more defensive players versus ball playing guys.
Got it.
So why did you say Brandon Craig wasn't included? Sorry, I missed it.
Brandon Craig, probably, like, if you look at resume of the players of who should be and who shouldn't be included on the roster, Brandon is a little bit behind these guys in terms of, like, things he's done at the pro level and such, and consistency there. And he's still growing into his frame, while a lot of these guys they're kind of built like men.
Now, David, this back line that we have, obviously, when it comes to goalkeeper for this age, we're looking pretty good right there, obviously.
Yeah.
But does this back line worry you against Brazil, for example?
Yeah.
The first game? Yes?
We're going to get roasted against Brazil. There's no other way to put it. Like, I don't want to sugarcoat it for viewers and get the hopes up. Like, these guys are good players. They really don't have much experience together. Like, Justin Shea was a center back the last time this group was together at the Nike Friendlies. Caleb Wiley and Jacob Green weren't even on the roster. But the only center backs I really would have been comfortable running out that are eligible were Justin Shea, Antonio Leone, as well as probably Brian Oko.
Pete, are you optimistic like him?
I don't know enough about these players to be optimistic or pessimistic. Like, I know a few of them.
Yeah.
I also don't know what's the other team's rosters are like, Brazil, Colombia. So it's hard for me to say. I'm just a learner here, to be honest.
Yeah. The thing is, Brazil's building a team. Brazil's building a team to try to win the U20 World Cup. That's what they're trying to put together. I know the center forward. I've watched Matheus Nascimento for Botafogo. He's 17. He's a pretty good center forward. Actually, he's a very good center forward for his age. He's going to cause a lot of trouble. Now, just one thing before we keep moving forward here. Guys, Ricardo Pepi, I know some people might ask this. Ricardo Pepi is not in this roster, by the way, okay? David put him as a depth chart piece, but he's not in the roster. Just want to make that clear.
That was accidental. There is another guy who's not there who we'll talk about. But, yeah, overall, like, this defensive group is going to be pretty solid defensively. I'm worried about how they're going to build out of the back. And especially going up against Brazil, like, we could get cooked. There's no other way to put it. Like, especially because this group, they're going to have 1 to 2 training sessions before going into it. They're all at least professionals. We didn't have that in any other cycle. In the January summit camp in 2017, beginning the 2019 cycle, actually it would have been 2018, sorry about that. Like, Chris Richards was still an academy player. He was with FC Dallas. Mark McKenzie, he was still in college with Wake Forest. Boubacar Keita was still a Crew Academy kid, yet to go to Wake Forest. Like, those were the center backs we took to that team that had the talent, realistically, to go to the semifinals of that World Cup. So it's not like, even though this group might not be super stout defensively, we have that much to worry about long term. Center back is also a position particularly that develops with age. So these guys, although they're very raw and have a lot to work on, they still could be good players in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
So
now, David, let's move to the midfield, and that's where our team starts to heat up, I would say, right? Starts to show off a lot of the talent we have. Obviously, any player that's not in the actual roster, but in the depth chart that you put here, please mention. At the end of this video, everyone that's watching right now, I'll throw on screen the picture of the actual full roster, even though this is pretty much it. But regardless, let's go to the defensive midfielders and talk about them. Start away with Daniel.
So to kind of cool down a little bit what you just said. This is another position that does worry me a little bit. But the best of these options is Danny Leyva. Danny, from a soccer IQ, tactical, as well as technical standpoint, in his ability on the ball, is the best of the three defensive mids. He's already a pretty routine player for Seattle Sounders, has a ton of experience in MLS level, has been in the MLS playing with the first team now for 3 seasons. So he's bringing that. He has Youth World Cup experience. He's the only one on this roster to claim that. So we have that going for him. The worry with Danny, and the worry that who he's going to be paired with in the midfield, is that will he be able to provide defensive cover? Danny is very good winning his duels, but getting to make those duels is the issue. He's not the fastest kid. There's you have retiree players who are as fast as him. That's not good. That's a big worry. In the U17 World Cup, that was really put on display when he was partnered with Adam Saldana. But on the ball, the kid is going to kill it, which we also saw in the U17 World Cup. Rarely loses possession. Moving from him is probably the kid next up, who I think is the second best 6 option, and that's Daniel Edelman. Daniel Edelman has been routinely the best player in New York Red Bulls 2 in the USL. He's pretty surefire lock to be the next academy signing out of Red Bulls. He's more well-rounded than Danny is. He's going to provide more defensive cover, but he isn't quite as polished on the ball and going forward, but he's still very solid. When you look at who we've had in past U20 cycles, his resume and the things he's done at the pro level is better than everyone. Even Tyler Adams at this point going into his U20 cycle wasn't getting that much pro experience. He was just coming back from residency with the youth national teams. He potentially made his debut at that point. That was it. Both Daniel Edelman and Jerry Garay after him, or Gary, however you say it, they both do have a lot of experience. It's just they're going to be going up against, particularly in Brazil, some damn good players. And that's a little bit of a worry. And then Jeremy Garay after that is a little more of a defensively stout player. He's going to be more of the ball winner. On the ball isn't quite up to the level of the other two, but still good enough. Good enough that we don't really have to make that much of a worry. But he's the guy that I'm expecting to get the least amount of minutes among the 3.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Pete, any thoughts on this section as well?
I haven't seen enough of any of them to really, build on anything David has already said.
Yeah, and when I watched the Sounders, Danny never got minutes when I watched. So I'm going with what David and this is one of the things I'm looking forward to this camp is a lot of these players I've heard of, and I'm finally going to get the chance to see them. Maybe not in the most ideal conditions because they just got together. It's not going to be perfect, but we're going to learn a lot about these players during the next 10 days.
Yeah, you're going to watch Danny Leyva, and you're going to see his running mechanics, and you're going to see a kid who's still noticeably growing into his body. Because he has. The kid's 6'2" now. Mm-hmm. He's grown a lot. But, he's so smooth in the ball, man. But moving into the center mids. So things to note about this is that this is another little depth chart error in that the guy who's probably the lock starter is Jack McGlynn. Now, when I talked about our worry about defensive and athletic prowess in the midfield, that is because of the combination of Danny Leyva and Jack McGlynn. Because Jack is better in the offensive third with Danny. His left foot is just absolute top quality. Amazing. He's fantastic on the ball. His soccer IQ is, again, fantastic. Europe level right there. What's his downside? Slow as molasses. Cannot cover ground.
Time out, David. Time out. Yeah. Are you just telling us that this whole team is slow? We're just all slow.
Wait till we get to the attacking group, man. That is.
We got Cade Cowell. We got Cade Cowell coming. He might be the fastest.
And Sealy.
And Sealy.
And all of those dudes, man. But that is a worry about this midfield. Is that who is going to be the guy that defensively holds this group together? We saw in the U20 World Cup in 2019, our midfield of Chris Durkin, Alex Mendez, didn't do so well defensively. That's why a kid from Ecuador drove the entire field, carved up both of them, and scored a banger from 25 yards while the entire team just watched it.
Yeah.
But on the ball, we have the technical quality between Danny Leyva, Danny Edelman, Jack McGlynn, even Jeremy Grant, Rokas Puksas to really control games. And offensively, it's going to be really exciting to watch. You're seeing Jack McGlynn do really potentially special things in MLS level. USL, he was the best kid in Philadelphia Union too, out of all of the talents they have.
Now,
So it's, yep.
David, so you said Jack McGlynn is going to be the starter in your opinion. That's
Yeah.
And Rokas Pukstar, is that how I say it?
Rokas Pukstas.
Rokas Pukstar. Does he play? He plays in Croatia?
Yep, he plays at Hajduk Split over in Croatia. So he
How
does
do they
have
find him?
They ID'd him somehow, but he does have a Croatian passport. So when he turned 16, he was able to move. But Rokas provides a little bit of the opposite of what Jack McGlynn does. On the ball, he's not quite as quality, but he does manage to cover ground and win those plays. And the kid does actually have some pace to him. He generally played a little bit more advanced in the U17s because he's one of the few 2004s that are playing up in this group. But he's overall, he's going to be more of your all-action player. But in terms of on-the-ball quality between him and Jack McGlynn, it's really not close. It's not a slight to Rokas. It's saying that Jack McGlynn is a baller. Really, he's a damn good player.
Pete, I'm assuming for this section you're just like me. Not much to talk about the center mids.
Yeah, I mean, I think David Kerr seems to be covering most of it. I just defer to his knowledge at this point.
Yeah, I think people will hear a lot of my opinions and Pete's on the players probably after camp. We're going to watch the games. We're going to break down each game, probably do live streams for them, and then we'll have a better grasp of a lot of these players besides the one we've watched in MLS already. But moving forward, these are players that we, at least, well, Pete definitely watched a lot of Caden Clark. I actually watched also enough of Paxton Erickson to know how he plays. So this will be one that maybe all of us can talk about, but I'll let, again, David. Yeah. Well, actually, let me let Pete talk first, because I know Pete knows Caden Clark very well. So, Pete, take the mic for Caden Clark.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been an up and down season for him. He was excellent up until, he had that appendectomy, right? And he was scoring bangers. And, I started question marks about his fit within that particular Red Bulls team. They just seemed a lot of the time like they wanted to go forward almost when there was nothing on. So every time anybody would win the ball, it would be try to hit, the striker or the wingers early as possible. And I just don't know if that suits Caden Clark as well. But yeah, he was still impressing. And then, he had the appendectomy and he's come back and he has not been good for quite a bit, of time, two months or so, where very inconsistent. I wasn't surprised. This happens with young players, especially coming off of a surgery like that. It interrupts momentum and you've got to rebuild your confidence and your form and everything all over again. The good news is the last couple of games, he started to, come back. We had an assist the other week. It was pretty good against Nashville this last weekend. He seems to be rounding into form for this tournament. And, when we talk about guys who can't defend or who are slow, that's not Caden. He's going to add some, on top of being really good with the ball at his feet, he's going to add some steel, definitely in terms of pressing, and his work rate in midfield, which he has in spades. That's my 2 cents on Clark.
And this is something not often talked about, right? Everyone talks about Caden Clark's bangers and his creativity, but they don't mention his pressing game, which is one of the best. Okay, maybe if I say one of the best in MLS, I'm exaggerating, but maybe not. It is one of the best. He's very good at his pressing game. It's something not very often talked about. And then there's Paxton Erickson, and I'm going to let David talk about him. Just one thing I noticed from Paxton, and I think it's impossible to not talk about Paxton without mentioning Brendan, right? It's always going to happen. And there are some similarities to their game, but there's one thing to point out that I had Paxton Erickson here in the channel, and he mentioned this to me, and I was like, all right, we'll see when the season starts. He said that he was working on his finishing ability from long shots and close distance more than Brendan was when he was younger. And we've seen this throughout the season. In terms of finishing ability, at this age especially, he's definitely ahead of Brendan at the age.
Yeah, Brendan had a bit of an ability to shank the ball directly at the goalie after doing amazing stuff on the ball to open himself up for the shot. Paxton's a killer. There's no way to put it. Like, this kid he's extremely gifted on the ball. He doesn't quite buzz around the field like Brendan does. He's not as active that way. But the kid is going to pull the strings, run the offense, break through the lines, play through pressure, all of that. Like, both Paxton or Caden can start at this spot, and I'm going to feel confident that they're going to do well bossing the game. They're just good players.
One thing to say is we talked about how Caden Clark scored bangers early on. Paxton Harrison also only scores bangers, so we better see a golazo here from these two throughout the camp.
Do you think there's a chance that we see Caden and Paxton as the dual eights together or not?
I don't think Jack McGlynn gets taken out of the lineup for them unless you place Jack at the 6.
The thing is, both Jack and Caden are left-footed, right?
No, Caden's actually right-footed. He's just scored bangers with his left foot. It's the kid. The reason I put Caden over Paxton is that even though Paxton's good, after Ricardo Pepe and Malik Sanogo, Caden's the superstar talent of this group. They're both.
I think Caden he actually goes to both feet. Can use both very well.
He does. Paxton honestly can too. It's hard to decipher these two.
Now, David, moving forward in the field here, now we reach the positions where we no longer have speed problems, right? Actually, the complete opposite.
No,
there's a lot of pace on the wings here. Let's start with maybe the paciest one of them all, Cade Cowell there on the left wing, which I personally prefer Cade Cowell on the right wing, but you placed him there on the left wing. Maybe we'll see him in both. Okay, let me talk real quick about Cade Cowell then, since it's a player that I did follow quite a bit in the season. Otherwise, because I'm going to have you talk about the rest and Pete. Cade Cowell, they played him sometimes as center forward, sometimes as a winger. I always thought he was much better on the winger. I was impressed with his crossing ability. He's able to whip in some very dangerous crosses. Technique-wise, technical ability and dribbling, showed some improvements throughout the season. Sometimes in tight spaces it doesn't seem the best. Sometimes it does seem the best. But one thing that shines from Cade Cowell is he's like the athletic ability of this kid is something that's not normal. It's something outstanding. Speed, strength, everything. It's just something that's just not normal, not even for his age. Even if he's a grown man, he's a super athletic kid. And then I'll let you or Pete take from here, whoever wants to talk about the left wingers.
Cade honestly has been the same size he was since 14. And it made me doubt his actual age since 14. Now, Cade is very good vertically, providing those runs, stretching the line that way. I think his interplay and his build-up could be a bit better, and how he uses that technique and skill outside of the final third a little more. But when you look for a player who athletically should just be unfair at this level, that one is it. You don't.
Why do you have him on the left wing, though? Why do you think they'll play him?
Because Dante Seeley was the chiseled into stone, like the 10 Commandments starter at the right winger for this group.
Mm-hmm.
Dante is an inverted left winger or right winger or a striker where he can cut it on creating his left foot. When he did that the last time this 2003 group was together, he was by far our best attacker. And that included when Jonathan Gomez, Kevin Paredes, Moses Nyman, and all of those guys were in this group. And Dante Seeley, when he was in that form, blew those kids away. So
all right. So and he's been playing very well also for Young PSV there, which is at the second division of the Dutch league, which is regardless, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And then who's next? Who are you talking about now? You're going to the right wing or left wing?
It's really we probably can take both these in the same spot. The thing to note is that all three of these subs could play in either wing and be fine. But it's Dante Seeley on the right wing who I think is a lock for that position. Just because he wants to cut in on his left foot. He's a little too left-footed, but it's really great with that. But when he is in form and mentally he's motivated, he has to start. And he's arguably our best attacker. Dante's issue growing up is that one game he would be fantastic. The next game he would be invisible. This is already happening with Young PSV. he scores a hat trick in one game. The next game, he wins like 50% of his duels and doesn't put anything on the score sheet. That has been a story for him ever since he was like 15, is that he would be dominant, unfair, playing up like 2 or 3 age groups. Then
So
the next
very
game,
hot
he
and
would
cold. Then you're saying he's hot, cold, hot, cold.
extremely hot and cold. Like, just, he looked a little bit bored in games, and then would come back and just completely manhandle kids. Like, he's done it against every level. Like,
Now, to finish up the left wing, you still got 2 more players to talk about. Start with Quinn.
yeah. So Quinn is a guy who can play at the 8, 10 winger or striker in this group. And he's just super well-rounded. Not the most athletic kid in terms of pace or physical strength, but he's extremely high IQ. He is very good on the ball, and his composure is really notable, and is willing to just try shit. Like when he decides to bicycle kick in a goal for his first ever MLS goal. Like, Quinn is a guy who's going to come in, and he can be a utility player in any of these spots, do very well. Diego Luna after him is a guy who's probably just going to be a winger in this group. Diego on the ball is fantastic. He's just super creative, super skilled, super slick, can absolutely take the soul of a defender who happens to line up in front of him, and he's really breaking and putting out like highlight reel after highlight reel in the USL, doing a little bit who his 2001 iteration before him of Jose Gallegos would do.
I think, David, so for Diego Luna, I'm going to use one of Pete's favorite words here. Diego Luna is very good getting out of tight spaces. At least that's what I've noticed in USL. Very technical. Sometimes there'll be 2 guys on him. He'll find a way out, find space when it seems like there is no space left. Diego Luna is very technical. Obviously, obviously we take it with a grain of salt depending on the league the player plays. Regardless, he shows a lot of sparks of talent, and I wonder where he's going to go next. That's something we can definitely figure out later. Have you seen any of them, Pete? Any of the, obviously, Cade Cowell you have, but if you
I caught 1 or 2 games of Quinn Sullivan, but David caught, he covered it. So.
Something to note about Quinn is that even though he is rightfully so in this roster, he's not the most talented player in his family. His youngest brother, Kevin Sullivan, of Philly's Academy, is absurdly good and is playing up 2 age groups and is still the best youth player I've ever seen. So,
hang on, David, say that again. He's the what?
He's the best youth player I've seen, and it's okay saying that. The kid's an insane talent.
And how long have you been covering youth soccer in America, or watching it?
It's been my hobby for the last decade.
So you saw Gio Reyna?
I watched Gio since he was 12 with Film Online. So
guys, David doesn't, he's complimentary of players, but he's not prone to hyperbole. So when he says this kid is, the most talented kid he's ever seen, he's not kidding.
No, honestly, he looks a lot like Christian Pulisic did in that age when you watch Christian's younger highlights.
What's his first name?
His name is Cavan, or Cavan, Cavan, and then Sullivan. He's the youngest of 4 brothers. They have 2 twins in between Quinn and Cavan. But the kid is just he's the chef's kiss, like unbelievable. I hope if he can get to Quinn's physical profile, he's going to be a dog. And then they have German citizenships too. So Philly will need to lock this kid down, or Germany's going to come calling.
Wait, the Sullivan kids are German? I thought they were half English.
German citizenship.
Eesh.
Already have the passports.
Oh boy. Well, hey.
I'm not worried. Their dad is very involved in the Philadelphia soccer community and is a staple there and a very well-known name. I am not worried about these guys ever bouncing.
Plus, we got Greg Berhalter. This guy can recruit like nobody. He can't do much of anything else, but he can recruit like nobody.
Dude, Greg literally goes his full Nick Saban. It's impressive, given that. But and then the last winger in this group, Brian Gutierrez,
which is a midfielder.
I'm putting him as a wing because he was listed on the roster as an attacker. Generally, he plays as a center attacking mid. Played against that for Chicago Fire against Columbus last night, 2 nights after this was released. Does well. Another guy pretty comfortable in tight spaces, great in the ball, good going forward. Pretty well-rounded attacking midfielder. For his size, he's very big and strong for his age. Not the quickest player, but you can throw him on either wing or the 10, and he's going to be excellent. Just one of those. It's
Now,
from
David,
Yep.
The center. Are you still finishing up on the wingers? Because I was going to ask you a question on the center forward.
On to the strikers.
Onto the strikers. So right now, onto the strikers, I'm going to put here on screen the actual full roster because, as we said, Ricardo Pepi is not in this roster. He's eligible. So the forward is actually Misael Rodriguez from Chicago Fire, along with Malik Sonogo. So before we talk about Malik, because I'm actually very interested in what you have to say about him here again, talk about Rodriguez from Chicago Fire.
So Misael Rodriguez, he played formerly, well, I guess maybe still currently, with the Chicago Fire U19s. He won the Golden Boot at the U19 MLS Next Cup in Dallas, where I was at. And the kid just bangs in goals. He's a little more of kind of your hold-up play, post-up, super technical, fun-to-watch forward. And your kind of classic guy like that. He's more of the Jesus Ferreira mold versus your big, fast, strong guy that stretches the line and does that. So he's going to be a player where he's enjoyable to watch playing soccer and does very well there. Now, when he gets to the professional level, kind of like Jesus Ferreira at younger ages, how physically does he handle it? You're not the biggest kid and you're going playing against grown men. At this U20 level in 2 years, the center backs are going to be grown men, basically. So that's going to be a little bit of a question how he handles that, but technically he's extremely good, extremely quality. Deserving that homegrown contract. It was him and an 05 who maybe 2 years from now can play up. Those two really carried this group. And then on to really the highlight name of this roster, and that's Malik Sonogo. So this is a player who, from a ceiling perspective, is the highest in this group. He is also one of the most raw players in this group. So what does Malik stand out in? His left foot is lethal from 25 yards. If you give him time and space, he's going to put the ball in the net. The reason why we say that is that all of the film that he's ever released and games that you can watch, this kid just bangs in goals for fun. He is the second leading scorer for like the last 3 years in his regional division of the German youth leagues. The only player higher than him was Yusufa Moukoko of Borussia Dortmund, who broke like every single statistical record that the German youth leagues had. So if that's the only kid who's able to outpace him, that's pretty impressive. Malik also comes from a very good soccer family that his dad is a strikers coach at Union Berlin with him. So it's not just that he's scoring goals because he's good, he's scoring goals because he's well coached from a very young age.
Can I ask you a horrible question right now?
Yeah.
Would you say his ceiling is higher than Ricardo Pepi?
No, not that high. Ricardo Pepi is more well-rounded than Malik Sonogo is right now. Mm-hmm. They're also a little bit different with players. So Malik's pros as a player is that athletically he's a monster. It's why he scores so many goals at his level, on top of being pretty good in the box and on the ball. He runs in behind constantly, like a Tim Weah, like people like that. He's just going to make center backs' lives hell when he plays. Now, where can he be better? He's extremely inconsistent on the ball. There are going to be moments where you watch this kid and you're like, that's a Bundesliga level player. And there's going to be other moments when you watch him and you're like, what are you doing? It's like U16 stuff. That happens. He's a player who athletically could do everything he wanted and completely boss games. There's a lot of habits that he has because he hasn't really been challenged that way up until he trains with the first team. He hasn't had the need to correct those habits yet. But once he does, he's going to be a top-tier striker. He's going to be pushing into the U.S. men's national team. He'd probably be pushing into the Ivory Coast national team, who, along with Germany, he's also eligible for. And Germany is interested in him. They've called him up into multiple youth camps. The notable thing about him, though, is that he doesn't yet have a citizenship, so he cannot actually play in games for Germany. That's huge for the USA, because he can play for us.
We better take advantage of it then and try to show him that he can play for us.
With Sonogo, it's going to be a lot of watching his actions to see here's where he is, what can he get to, and his room for improvement combined with the current floor he has now is very good. So,
all right. So before we wrap it up here, first I want to say thank you to both of you for coming here, taking the time, obviously. Second is, guys, anyone watching this, don't forget to go to 11 Yanks, Pete's channel. We will be doing full coverage of this camp and of the senior squad camp here and there. So make sure you subscribe to both, because you'll see live streams here, and then you'll see post matches there, and you'll see breakdowns here and breaks down there. So it'll be all over the place. David Kerr, you guys give him a follow on Twitter. I put the handle down below on the description as well. It's worth the follow, especially if you enjoyed the type of content here and youth national team level coverage that he provides. So, Pete, any final thoughts before we go?
No, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. It's been a long time since we've had U20 camps, and so it's going to be fun. Tack and I are going to cover it like it's a senior team game. He's going to do live streams that I'll be there for the preview and halftime, and then, I'll do a post-game eval on my channel. So we're going to cover it with the same level of seriousness as we take the senior team, even though maybe the federation doesn't do it that way.
And to be fair with them, the challenge that they also had is that, and it's a new challenge that we've never had in a youth cycle. All of these kids are pros. They're all playing with their pro teams too. So if we try to call these kids out of their professional teams into camps earlier, they probably all would have just straight up rejected it.
But I think it has more to do with like the coach, right? You could have hired a coach earlier.
That is part of it. It's also part to do that. We had like 8 of these guys, something like that, get actual minutes in the final day of MLS.
Yeah.
And produce, which if you look at the 2019 cycle, you had 6 kids signed pro. Only Paxton Pomykal, Chris Durkin, and Andrew Carlton made debuts. 2 of the 3 were in USL. Now we have guys that are...
One thing, David, to point out too, the Brazilian squad that's coming up, if you look at a professional minute standpoint, I believe they have less minutes than this US squad, just to make it clear. They're all youth players.
And part to know with that is also the room to break into the squad. Brazil teams are going to be harder to get minutes at, depending on position. But also MLS, you have the barrier to entry isn't as high. The bar to meet to get minutes and make plays there isn't. It's still a lot higher than what it was 5-10 years ago. But Brazil didn't have Brazil kids aren't quite as fortunate there. Most leagues aren't. That's why we're kind of skyrocketing in the U20 minutes across the world. But the thing to note is that this group has not played together really at all. A few of these kids have used national team reps. Cade Cowell wasn't in the last camp. Caden Clark wasn't there. Paxton Aronson wasn't there. Quinn Sullivan, Diego Luna, Malik Sonogo, Danny Leyva wasn't there. Jeremy Garay wasn't. A lot of these kids on this roster have not played together. They've had 2 days to train. So the Brazil game could get ugly. The Mexico and Colombia games, we should be expected to either get a draw or win against those teams. All really depends on chemistry. Because that Mexico group has practiced together a lot, not sure in Colombia. From a talent perspective, you have kids that are making the Mexico rosters that wouldn't have a shot at ours. The exception being Antonio Leone, who I would love to have in this team. And the thing for people to keep in mind with our group watching this is that these are U18s. And they're developing U18s. They're not going to be the entire package. You're going to have high ceiling players who are going to make mistakes. Caden Clark is going to go into the game and play hero ball half the time. He's still learning. A lot of these guys are. Like Sonogo has a lot of things he can work on. So does Cade Cowell. So does Dante Seeley. But you have to look and say, when they put it together, what can this player do? You also have a lot of guys in this group who weren't able to make this roster. Kids like Moses Nyman, Ricardo Pepi, Zach Booth, guys like that. Great players. So this is a really deep pool. And as they go in, should really start to come together as a group.
I also think that these youth tournaments, what many people need to notice is obviously you want to come in to win it. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is for you to find some key pieces that later on you can use it on the senior level, right?
Yeah.
So there's no point on us winning a youth tournament, right? I mean, obviously senior squad, yeah, we want to get trophies. That's what it matters. But in this level, there's no point on you just winning, winning and not developing or finding talent or preparing players for the future. If you don't do that, you failed as a youth team. That is the goal. You can't be like Mexico that wins a bunch of youth World Cups and then never translates it to a higher level.
Bingo.
Yeah. So just real quick on that, guys, as a fan, as somebody who's watching, what's talent? You want to look for guys who are talented. Just two things I want people to watch for. One, look for guys who can receive the ball in traffic and then use skill and technique to get out of pressure and create, because that is huge. That is the sign of elite technique. Can you get out of pressure? Can you receive the ball in very small, tight spaces and then get out of them to create something? The other thing is watch them off the ball. I mean, off the ball, we don't talk about it enough. You spend 2 minutes out of 90 on the ball. Watch movement, because that movement off the ball is an indicator of intelligence and game, smarts, for lack of a better word. So watch those two things, and you'll learn a lot.
Something Pepi excels on. Pepi excels on off the ball a lot.
And something Malik Sonogo needs to be better on.
Yeah.
We're going to be watching that. So, guys, as we said, we'll be doing live streams for all the games. We're going to be doing post matches at 11 Yanks. Pete, David, thank you very much for coming. Thank you, everyone that watched. Have a great day, everyone.